been a while since I was before you. Again, there are a few things that have happened. In fact, quite a few things have happened since I did my last Do Know segment. So let me just kind of bring you up to date on a few things. Okay? One of the most recent things I've heard is Simone Biles. Okay? Um, the little goat that is greatest of all times. Okay? She is still going about breaking world records. Okay? She came back after a mental health break, and she came back stronger than ever. So I'm reminded of her when we walk at the park, because there's this edge along the pathway at Kenneth Hahn Park, and I tend to try and walk that little pathway. And one guy had the nerve to say, "Oh, you're going back to you're regressing back to your childhood." I said, "Oh, no, no, I'm just following in the footsteps of Simone Biles." Okay, so just be aware that she's bad. She's bad. There are a couple of ladies I want you to be aware of. Okay, they're very much in the news now. Okay, Fani Willis. She is the DA, or the District Attorney of Fulton County, Georgia. Now, she has brought charges against the former president and some 17 or 18 other alleged conspirators interfering in the election in Georgia. Now, I mentioned Fani Willis because I understand that she was actually born here in Inglewood, California. And she was here until she was at least 6 years old. So it really made me wonder whether or not she attended IUSD, if she had attended kindergarten in one of Inglewood Unified School District's schools. Again, her name is Fani Willis, and I understand that one of her parents is still here. The other name that comes to mind is Letitia James. Now, that's another district attorney. She's the DA in New York. Again, the two of them, these ladies, seem to really be on their job. These black women, what are they up to? My goodness. I know the former president wished they would get lost somewhere. Okay, just be aware. Our history continues. Reverend Jesse Jackson, 81 years old. He has transitioned, and I don't mean die now, but he's transitioned to emeritus status. And the Reverend Dr. Frederick Douglass Haynes III has been welcomed in as the next president of the Rainbow Push Coalition in Chicago at their 57th annual conference, where our own Vice President Kamala Harris was also in attendance. But again, the name Reverend Jesse Jackson should be familiar with you or to you. In his own words, he exclaimed that our goal then and now has been to expand and protect civil rights, to seek and promote social and economic justice, and to empower people to take control of their lives and their communities. Okay, he goes on to say that he still intends to be an active participant, but he's going to focus on mentoring and teaching ministers how to fight for social justice. Again, Reverend Jesse Jackson. One of the names then that comes to mind when you think in terms of Dr. King, okay, Reverend Jesse Jackson. I can see him now, pointing over in the area where the shots came from when Dr. King was assassinated. Today, this is being taped on the 60th anniversary of the March on Washington. Okay? Why march? There are a number of reasons why march. There is voting rights, okay? Voting mobilization and election protection work. All these things in that are still with us today. Inclusive economy, racial wealth gap, dealing with student debt, diversity, equitable education, health equity, and environmental justice. Missing at the march this time will be such people as A. Philip Randolph, Roy Wilkins, John Lewis, and of course, Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. This march is a chance to bring together global civil rights leaders and partner organizations from across the country to evaluate the progress made to achieve Dr. King's dream while continuing to highlight work that's still needed to bring peace, justice, and equity to the world. You can go online and see the original March on Washington. You can go to the historical legacy of the March on Washington, 1963, the historical legacy of the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom. That's through the Smithsonian National Museum of African American History and Culture. Again, the things that were taking place in 1963. You can even see where Marian Anderson had a chance to sing the song, He's Got the Whole World in His Hands. And she was most noted then for 1939, going to the steps of the Lincoln Memorial after the Daughters of the American Revolution refused to allow her to sing on the stage of their Constitution Hall because of the color of her skin. So again, just still dealing with things. I'm reminded of our vacation trip going down south, and having lived in Los Angeles for so many years, we had to really make an attitude adjustment. What does that mean? We had to get prepared for where we were heading. Now, we were traveling by RV, and we were going to stop in different places, okay, different states. Okay, one of the states was Texas. And do know that Texas is an open carry state, okay? You need to know what that means. I told my husband as we came to one of the places where we had called and made reservations and we knew that it was going to be closed. They had left the brochure out along with the instructions and told us exactly where we were to spend the night. And I told him, well, you cannot walk with your flashlight looking for a number. I said, we'll both have to go. And as we were going, we took the brochure from the place where we were staying. We had the light, okay? But we went together until we found the spot where we were going to go. We didn't know exactly whether it was going to be a pull-through site or one where we had to disconnect. And do know that if you are if you are driving an RV, it's like you do not have reverse. You have to keep going. So we decided we just look for the numbers and check out that site before we try to pull into it. It reminded us, in terms of our history, it reminded us of the fact that one time we went to one of the RV resorts and we saw a man just walking his dog. But on his waist, he had his gun. And at the same time, we didn't want him to say that he feared for his life because he saw us. Okay? Because that has happened to people in our community just walking, and him saying that he was afraid of this young black man who actually just had a box of Skittles. Okay? So again, you need to know your history. As I was getting ready to prepare this segment, I wanted to point out the fact then that I wanted to share some things about Montgomery, Alabama. So we spent the day um, in Montgomery, and I said, well, how can I get people in Los Angeles interested in finding out what's going on in Montgomery? But just being a quilter, you know then that you get your inspirations from wherever. It just so happens then that something happened in Montgomery um, to a black dock worker, and it tended to stay on the news. Um, and as it turns out, um, I wanted to tell people, and I still want to tell you, if you have relatives or friends who are in the South or who are traveling in the South, if they're near Montgomery, okay, if they're relatives in Alabama or friends in Georgia, in Florida, in Tennessee, then do go by Montgomery to the Legacy Museum. Okay, I would encourage my students then, um, as you go to family reunions, as you go on your vacations during the summertime, always check to see what of historical value took place in that place where you're actually going. Okay, don't just rely on your schools to teach your children Black history. Be willing to sponsor field trips of historically significant places. And for the kids, as you're traveling, just put on your hat as if you were an explorer, as you were an investigator, and search for clues about your past. Okay, the term legacy suggests that something was handed down to those who have, and to those of you, let me get that right. Something is handed down from those who have gone on before you. So the Legacy Museum. As I was again considering talking about Montgomery on the LA Times August 17th issue, there was an article by Dr. Karenga, who happens to be the chair of the African Studies Department at Cal State University, Long Beach. He's also the director of the African American Cultural Center, and he is also the creator of Kwanzaa. He goes on to say that there was a solidarity and collective resistance in Montgomery, demonstrated by Black people in defense of Damian Pickett, a Black man against the unprovoked and unjustifiable aggression of a group of whites, of males and females, attacking him in mass, punching, kicking, and cursing him and shouting racist slurs. Co-Captain Pickett was just doing his job when he was attacked by whites at the Montgomery River docks, and Black people walked, ran, and swam defiantly to his defense. Now, once before I was saying we have a way of communicating sometimes that is not necessarily with words. One of the things then that this dock worker did was he just threw his hat up. And again, people knew, hey, something's up. I need some help. Okay? So again, I wanted to tell you about Montgomery. And again, that was what was happening at the docks of Montgomery. But I went to the Legacy Museum and I saw some things that really fascinated me. And I believe you'd be fascinated by it also. My son, when he went once, he brought me back a calendar. And for each day, it shows events that took place in our history over time. Okay, this is called A History of Racial Injustice. And I guess this really stood out to me because when I think in terms of states like Florida, who really don't want Black history taught, okay, the thing that sticks to me is this is a legacy museum. So it's not a part of anybody's imagination. Okay, it is built on facts. One of the comments that this says, you can check out this calendar. Go to calendar.eji EJI, EJI, okay, .org. It goes on to say that more than 300 coalitions have come together in dozens of communities across the country to engage honestly with their history through truth telling events and installing historical markers, which have now been erected in some 20 states. Okay? EJI, Equal Justice Initiative. Okay, so just be aware of that. As we went into this legacy museum, the thing that really literally took my breath away when we first walked in, there was an entire wall that gave you the impression that you were on a ship. And the wall was just moving with water. So just imagine how you would feel if the wall around you, okay, was just simply moving with water. And what it was doing, it was trying to make you feel a connection to what those who were being brought to the new world, what they experienced. So as you would go through this first room, okay, that's what you would see and that's what you would feel. In going to the second room, and just realize too, these rooms were really filled with people, and you could literally hear a pin drop. It was just that serious. As we went to the second room, on the wall, it looked as if there was water that came up to, I'll say, your knees. And as you could look through the water, you could see bodies. You could see people who, first of all, refused to come to this nation as a slave. You could see perhaps bodies of children where their parents had just thrown them overboard. You could also see bodies of people, and I'll show you this picture, like this, where they still had the chains around their necks. And rather than live as a slave, they chose to die. They chose to die. So just be aware, the Legacy Museum. And as you walk through this museum, you could just feel the seriousness of it. Okay? No stories. This was their lives. This was their lives. And continuing to walk through this legacy museum, there were, I guess you would say, cells. And as you would look in the different cells, you could see where stories were being shared about the life of the person that was being discussed. And you would go from one cell to the next. It was just really touching. It was just really touching. But again, just the reality of it and what people actually had to experience. In leaving one part of this legacy museum, you board a bus, get on a bus, and you would go to another section. And in this section, before we leave, let me share this legacy museum. The Legacy Museum, located on the site of a former cotton warehouse where enslaved Black people were forced to labor. They use interactive media, they use sculpture, videography, and exhibits to draw dynamic connections across generations of Americans impacted by slavery, lynching, segregation, and mass incarceration. Okay, just be aware of that was at that station, that legacy museum. You would board a bus and go to another part of it. And this is called the National Memorial for Peace and Justice. And this National Memorial for Peace and Justice is a sacred space for truth telling. And I have to emphasize that truth telling and reflection about racial terror in America and its legacy. It sat on a 6-acre site, and the memorial uses sculpture, art, and design to contextualize racial terror, to show lynchings and the legacy of racial injustice. In going to that part of the museum, this is a wall. Let me share this with you. This is a wall. And on this wall, it shows each container has soil. It has dirt of where a lynching has taken place. And as you would walk into this room, just imagine, okay, you see two people standing here. But again, it was a room full of jars, and each jar will tell you the county that this soil was taken from, because people were actually lynched there. They were actually lynched there. So I encourage you, as part of your history, again, check things out, okay? Don't settle for just reading in a book, okay? Look and find out some places there where they're located, and you and your family, especially your children, take them to really see part of our history. In going through and getting ready to close, okay, in walking through the museum, the Legacy Museum, if you're a student at Sunnyside and you're a teenager, I will ask you, are you a registered voter? And if you tell me no, okay, then I just tell them, hey, just do no. All you have to do, babe, all you have to do is fill out a form. And we keep forms in our foyer. I keep forms, voter registration forms in the trunk of my car. But at this Legacy Museum, I actually came across some tests that were given that you had to pass in order to be a registered voter. My grandfather, my grandmother understood that. Let me share with you some of the questions that were on the test. Okay? And it tells you to register to vote in this state, you must correctly answer the questions in this examination. Number 1, how many jelly beans are in the jar in front of you? So imagine this big jar of jelly beans, okay? You had to answer that correctly. Number 2, name 2 things which the state are forbidden to do by the United States Constitution. Okay. Number 3, what does the Constitution of the United States provide regarding the suspension of the privilege of the writ of habeas corpus? Okay. Number 4, how many bubbles are in a bar of soap? Okay, this is a test in order for you to register to vote. Number 5, draw a figure at the bottom of this page that is square in the shape. Divide it in half by drawing a straight line from its northeast corner to its southwest corner, and then divide it once more by drawing a broken line from the middle of its western side to the middle of its eastern side. Okay? Number 6, How many seeds are in a watermelon? Okay. Number 7, draw 5 circles at the bottom of this sheet that have one common interlocking heart. Okay. Number 8, how may the county seat be changed under the Constitution of your state? Number 9, divide a vertical line in 2 equal parts by bisecting it with a curved horizontal line that is only straight at its spot bisection of the vertical. Okay, that's all you have to do in order to register to vote. Answer that. And number 10, in what year did Congress gain the right to prohibit the migration of persons to the states? Again, the Legacy Museum voter registration exam number 2. That's all you had to do in order to register to vote. But today, all you have to do is fill out a form, okay? Sign your name, and it already has a stamp on it. Just drop it in the mailbox, okay? That's what I wanted to share with you this time, okay? I hope you were able to pick up on some bits and pieces of our history. Again, our history is something else. And just do know that just because COVID, they're saying, they're not stressing the fact that you need to wear a mask. I urge you to do what you feel is in your best interest at all times. And if you look around and you find that you're the only one in a room full of people that has on a mask, good for you. God bless.